Thank you very much for coming, everybody. This is our second year doing a seminar at the Roxy. Does everybody like the seating? Great. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out this morning for Cars and Coffee. And you know, Concours de Le Mans is happening over on 1st Avenue West between 8th and 9th Street, just across from the Tom Thompson Gallery. We're really honored today to be having the history of 60 years of the history of the Porsche 911. This is the 60th anniversary, and this iconic rear-engine sports car has been on the top of many of our particularly male minds. So thank you very much. We're going to have the Buick seminar at 3:15, and that's on talking about the evolution of design, 120 years of Buick. And today, I'm going to switch back. Don't forget, tomorrow, the Concours at 9 a.m., gates open to the public. Rain or shine, we will have the cars on the field. About half of them are loading in this afternoon. It's going to be our best show yet, and I think you'll really see some incredibly wonderful vehicles. I'd like to introduce Patrick St-Pierre from Porsche Cars Canada. He's been in public relations at Porsche Cars Canada since 2011. And the best part from my perspective when I look at his bio is he's a graduate from the Canadian Automotive Institute of Georgian College in Barrie, Ontario, close to home. Patrick, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Rob was mentioning, I'm Patrick St-Pierre. I'm with Porsche Canada. Although I wasn't alive in 1963, I accepted to hold this seminar and really talk about the 60 years of this phenomenal car that we call the Porsche 911. And during the 6 decades that it's been around, it's been the very definition of a sports car and far more than just a means of transportation. Over that time, Porsche has crafted the 911 into a cult classic for car lovers, while at the same time keeping it at the technological cutting edge with a steady flow of innovation. Allow me to start with a video on the development of the 911 throughout the years. Few cars inspire as much enthusiasm as the Porsche 911. No matter which model or which generation, it's just always the same. Even just getting into a 911 is a similar experience. The feel of the perfectly placed seat position, the look of the circular instruments, just the intuitive general operation of the controls is all very familiar. And the low-slung front hood has always been bordered by two distinctive wings. And that's just ideal for lining up the car to hit the next apex. The Boxer engine grows to life with a twist of the ignition key that's to the left of the steering wheel. It's throaty, raspy, typically Porsche. Whether air-cooled, water-cooled, the Boxer engine in the rear of the 911 has always been the model's beating heart. Its inimitable sound and powerful thrust delivering a one-of-a-kind driving experience. Yet, Porsche drivers also prize the reliability and efficiency of the 911. It is the sum of sports car performance, powerful engines that are efficient and robust, and a concept geared towards fast and precise driving, and an extraordinary design that has defined the Porsche 911 for 60 years, and counting. The 911 combines a great model and engine variety with reliability. No wonder then that the 911 has been the favorite car of many international artists, actors, fashion designers, athletes, and entrepreneurs for decades. The Porsche 911 has had leading roles in countless films, including the Le Mans 1970 cinematic masterpiece. As a successor to the Porsche 356, the 901 had big shoes to fill when it was launched in 1963. The 901 offered more space for passengers and luggage, and it also offered more power and more driving comfort. Designer Ferdinand Alexander Porsche, the eldest son of Ferry Porsche, was responsible for the design of the 2.2-seater, or 2+2-seater rather, with a hatchback on a unibody frame, optimizing the function while uncompromisingly reducing the form to the essential, transcending the familiar in order to keep finding the new, better solution. And it was really his life's mission, Ferdinand Alexander Porsche's, that is. It was really why the Porsche engineers developed a new short-stroke, high-revving six-cylinder, which was really very powerful for its days with 130 PS, and it had a 5-speed manual gearbox, again, which was advanced for its time. The renaming of the 911 took place as Peugeot had a trademark on the number sequences with a 0 in the middle. Production of the 901 began on September 14, 1964. Shortly after, Porsche renamed the new car the 911. The first air-cooled six-cylinder Boxer engine was powerful enough to reach 210 kilometers an hour. In comparison, a VW Beetle 1200 with 30 PS topped out at 112 kilometers an hour. From 65, Porsche offered the four-cylinder 912, and a year later, it launched the 911S with 160 PS. In the fall of 1965, it unveiled the 911 Targa with a striking stainless steel rollover bar, the first truly safety-conscious cabriolet in the world. The Porsche 911 became more and more powerful as displacement increased to 2.2 liters in 1969, and then 2.4 in 1971. Porsche was quick to recognize the advantages of diversification and offer different models to customers around the world. During the 1973 financial year, Porsche built 81,100 examples of the 911 and nearly 31,000 of the 912. And more than 50 years ago, Porsche began the development of the 911 Carrera RS 2.7. The RS 2.7 was intended as an homologation special. It was very light, it was fast, and even though the model variant was based on the 911, it ended up becoming a new base for racing and rallying, and that featured many technological innovations. And the most powerful model of the first generation of the 911, it was the first one also to be called Carrera, and it was the crowning glory of the Porsche range at that time. Weight, aerodynamics, engine, and chassis were all worked on intensively. And the car's 2.7 flat six was fuel injected, and it was very powerful, again, for that day, 210 PS. And it enabled it to reach 100 kilometers an hour from zero in 5.8 seconds, making it the first car to break the 6-second mark, according to the German trade journal Automotor und Sport. So the top speed was 245 kilometers an hour. So it became really the synthesis between weight, performance, aerodynamics, and handling. The Ducktail RS, or 2.7, today it's known as many different nicknames, but the significance remains unique. It was the fastest German production car of its day, and the first series production with a front and rear spoiler. And that's why the car is now referred to as the Ducktail. So in 1972, Porsche launched the trend for rear spoilers on series production cars. Let's have a look at a video.
Porsche and duck. That doesn't fit together, or does it? We're in the year 1972. Back then, the 911 was supposed to get even faster and homologated for motorsport. The problem was that the aerodynamics did not live up to what the chassis and engine promised. The developers had to pull something out of the hat. The holy 911 silhouette got a pat on its backside. They called it Ducktail. It was a rear spoiler. It created stability and a higher top speed, and even won the designers over. The Porsche with the Ducktail was born, the 911 Carrera RS 2.7. Germany's fastest production vehicle at the time, and an extremely coveted collector's item today.
So let's move on to the second generation. 1973 was an eventful year. The oil crisis, the Watergate scandal, and the Yom Kippur War. On a more positive note, the Bahamas celebrated their independence from the UK, and Porsche unveiled the second generation of the 911. Porsche had been producing the first generation for 10 years when the engineers decided to radically revamp the sports car. Beyond the modified design, it was the technology in the G Series that was really setting it apart from its predecessor. So no one would have guessed, though, 50 years ago that the model would go on to be produced until 1989, which is almost 16 years, and it is the longest among all 911 generations. The most striking features of the redesigned body were the bellows-style sections on the front, on the side of the bumpers. And these were really a solution, a technical solution, in order to meet the stricter safety regulations from the US that required all vehicles to stand impacts at 8 kilometers an hour or 5 miles per hour without sustaining damage, front or rear. And in the US version, the impact energy was absorbed by elastic impact absorbers that Porsche actually offered as an option for all other markets. And it also really slightly modified the characteristic of the rounded front wings with the integrated upright headlights. And at the back, there was a red light strip with the Porsche logo between the rear lights, and it distinguished this generation of the 911. Standard 3-point seat belts and front seats with headrests provided greater safety, and the interior was also more spacious. Porsche integrated large impact structure surface within the new sports steering wheel, and then also some storage compartments in the hinged lids that were in the doors. And the 911 Carrera featured a 3-spoke leather steering wheel and electric windows. And although the more modern design and wide bumpers were not initially well received by all Porsche fans, the changes were overdue. As you see, in the 60s, cars tended to have a lot of chrome, and really when it came down to the 70s, chrome was seen as passé. So it was time to really make the car look a little more contemporary. It was also, there was an update that underscored the body that was now 144 millimeter longer than its forebearer. And changes notwithstanding, Porsche managed to retain the classic 911 silhouette for the new generation. Evolution, not revolution. Porsche initially opted for the six-cylinder Boxer with 2.7 liters displacement as well as mechanical fuel injection. There were two performance levels available, 150 PS and 210 PS, and it's really the high torque of the Boxer engine. It was surprisingly designed for regular fuel. The first Porsche 911 Turbo with its 3-liter, 260 horsepower engine, an enormous rear spoiler, was launched in 1973. The Turbo would become synonymous with extreme performance, especially once an intercooler was added in the mix for 1977. From 1975, the displacement went on for net normally aspirated engine to 3 liters, and it now made 200 PS. And it also had a hot dip galvanized sheet metal technology for the body and floor pan, which really were done to enhance durability and resistance to rust. Porsche also introduced a 4-cylinder version for the US called the 912E, and that one was retailing at $10,844 US at that time. The 911 Carrera 3.2 liters with 231 PS arrived in 1983. That was the same year that we added the Cabriolet for the very first time. And the 911 Carrera 3.2 appeared for 1984 model year and introduced the digital engine electronics. Towards the end of production, the G Series received a final power bump from 207 to 217 PS. Back in the 70s and 80s, the Turbo's high horsepower enabled brute forward propulsion. Engineers from Zuffenhausen and Weissach appeared on the scene to make sure that the power developed in a more orderly fashion, but they did not dilute the racing genes in the process. At the same time, they encouraged more economical use of fuel. The 930 moniker was the internal designation for the first 911 with a turbocharger. While other car makers were still relying on large displacements, Porsche broke new ground introducing a turbo engine. So the lean 911 had really no place for an 8 or 12-cylinder engine. So having a turbocharger, and later on 2 turbochargers, really allowed for additional air to be introduced in the engine and really still enhancing the sporting qualities of the vehicle. As a result, the 6-cylinder really only went from 3 liters in 1974 to 3.8 today, so, but still has been increasing in power every time. Now let's have a look at the Special 911 Turbo, but hear it from its owner. That's right here in Canada.
My name is Bill McEachran. I'm the original owner of a 930 Turbo Porsche, which now has 725,000 miles on it, equal to 1,150,000 kilometers. Me and my car have been driving together for 41 years, and we're growing old together, and I think I am the world's record holder on this particular model of Porsche. In the last 40 years in my carpet cleaning business, I have to go and visit customers, so just day after day driving, the miles just kept adding up year after year. If somebody calls me across the city and wants me to look at a small stain in their carpet, I'm very happy to go there because I can drive my Porsche there, you see. I'm trying to get to 1 million miles. That would be really wonderful if I could get to 1 million miles. The car goes to my son that's already in his name. So if we should be fortunate enough to drive it another 250,000 miles, I'll take it.
The third generation of the sports car, known internally as Type 964, really combined the traditional silhouette of the classic model with state-of-the-art technology. It was also a bet on the future of the company, which at that time was experiencing economic challenges, a bet that the third generation would win. The all-wheel drive Carrera 4 model was the first to launch. The 911 Carrera 2 with rear-wheel drive followed in 1989. The Cabriolet and Targa versions celebrated their debut alongside the coupe, and also with the body only being modified by having integrated bumpers, 85% of the 964 consisted of newly designed parts. At 3.6 liters, the air-cooled flat-six engine reached new heights in terms of displacement, now delivered 250 PS on the Carrera 2 and 4 models. And one of the technical innovations was the fact that the Boxer engine adopted twin-spark ignition, which Porsche had originally developed for greater operational reliability in aircraft engines. At the same time, the aerodynamic lift at the rear axle was almost completely eliminated due to the rear spoiler now being retractable. And there was another new feature, the adaptive Tiptronic gearbox, which offered smooth gear shifting at the flick of a wrist. There was also a Jubilee model, which was really there to celebrate the 30 years of the car. And the way this car was made was really, it sold out very quickly, but it had the look of the 911 Turbo minus the rear wings, so it was really a wider body, but yet it had the normally aspirated engine, and it had the all-wheel drive system. Also, it had a very characteristic color, which was called Viola Metallic. And adding to the exclusivity, the 911 Speedster was launched in 1993 with a shortened windscreen, modified roof structure, and signature double bubble cover behind the front seats. 930 cars were built on the basis of the Carrera 2 Cabriolet, plus a further 15 vehicles with a wide turbo-look body. The turbocharged versions were the top of the line in the 911 range for the 964 model. So it initially adopted the 3.3 liter from the predecessor, which was at that time 320 PS, and then the 911 Turbo S delivered 381 PS. And the model switched to a new 3.6 liter engine with the 360 PS at the start of 1993. The next generation was already knocking at the door from October of that year, but Porsche produced a total of 63,762 Type 964 vehicles between 1988 and 1994. The first model variant immediately showed just how advanced the new 911 was. It was an all-wheel drive system that Porsche had originally designed for the 959 high-performance sports cars, and it was introduced for the very first time in the 911 Carrera lineup. And it had an electronically controlled and hydraulically regulated power distribution. It was well ahead of its time. And the all-wheel drive system used sensors of the anti-lock braking system, the ABS, to identify slippage and help better manage traction. The fourth generation of the 911, known as the 993, is one of the most desirable additions in the history of the classic vehicle. Although practically only the roofline remained unchanged, the new model impressed with a completely reinterpreted look of the car. So it had a lot of concave and convex forms, integrated bumpers. It was just so many things that impressed, and just a lot of people consider it the epitome of the 911 in terms of design. And what really underlined its leading position was the fact that it had a completely redesigned LSA aluminum chassis, which combined lightweight construction, stability, and agility. Up to the present day, the new multi-link suspension that was introduced in this car is considered to be the ultimate development from Weissach, the Weissach rear axle. And this resulted in even better driving dynamics and enhanced suspension comfort. Initially, Porsche offered the 993 only as a coupe and cabriolet. The Targa didn't make it until 1995. And at that time, a new concept arrived. Instead of a removable hardtop, it had a broad electric glass roof which slid under the rear window. That was another body variant that was added in addition to the Carrera 4S, which was the all-wheel drive model, and then later on the Carrera S. And it combined the wide body and chassis of the 911 Turbo, but only the rear wing was omitted. The Flat 6 provided another reason why the 993 was popular among collectors and fans. It was the last one to feature air cooling. And initially it had 272 PS for the 2-valve model, and again with twin spark ignition, already delivered 285 from 1995 onwards. Porsche also added a 300 PS variant. The manual transmission was also new. It had 6 gears, which allowed for a higher top speed, which was 270 kilometers an hour. In the end, staking everything on the 911, the Type 993 paid off for Porsche. The chapter of air-cooled engine in this unique model ended with the 4th generation of this iconic sports car in 1998. The second era then started 35 years after. It was the beginning of a time that would see unparalleled success for the 911 and for Porsche. And Porsche produced a total of nearly 69,000 vehicles of the Type 993 between 93 and 98. The 911 Turbo from the 993 model line had turbocharging, but it was the first time they'd had 2. There were smaller turbochargers and one for each of the cylinder banks. It was also the first turbo model to feature all-wheel drive. And it had the front apron, which had 3 separate air openings for brake cooling, and also rear spoiler that was completely painted in the color of the body. Also, the 3.6-liter bi-turbo engine had a power output of 408 horsepower standard, but as of '96, a power kit for increasing power to 430 horsepower was made available, and 450 as of 1998. In model year 1995, Porsche exclusive produced a limited production run of 14 units of the 911 Cabriolet Turbo. That happened to be the very first 911 Turbo that was available with that body style. And the 5th generation of the 911 was introduced in 1997, Type 996. Porsche took a bold step to stop using the air-cooled engine. After 34 years, the sports car manufacturer completely revamped its icon with the new 911, and in doing so, solved a number of challenges. As part of that process, it had started with the predecessor, the focus on reducing production costs, and that was through maximum compatibility of parts through other model series, such as the Boxster, as well as meeting updated safety and emission standards. Porsche found its path into the future with the 996. It did this by preserving classic proportions and combining them with modern technology. In short, reinventing a sports car legend and preparing it for the future. The 996 had a difficult legacy to follow, but also represented the first chapter of a new era. It was already clear in the design. The dimensions grew. The car was 18.5 centimeters longer. The wheelbase also lengthened for the second time in the history of the model. And the interior benefited from these changes. The 996 offered more elbow room, more generous feeling of spaciousness. The dashboard also had a new look, 5 round instruments that blended into one another break with tradition. However, the greatest revolution was at the rear. The flat engine was preserved, but its air cooling was gone, replaced with water cooling. And this, again, was necessary because of emissions regulations. And this was, however, not affecting performance, quite the opposite. It was now 300 PS, and it was a 4-valve head design, and it had a 3.4-liter displacement. And also, it matched the 911 Turbo 3.3. So after an engine displacement bumped to 3.6 liters, this increased the power to 320 PS, and the power output even reached 345 PS in the 40th anniversary edition of that model. The 911 Turbo also received a new water-cooled flat engine. This one had an impressive record. The 3.26 cylinder, which already powered the 911 GT1 to victory at Le Mans in 1998, and thanks to turbocharging, it delivered 420 PS in this car. The 911 was therefore the first series production model from Porsche to break the 300 kilometers an hour barrier. In the 911 GT2, the unit even produced up to 483 PS. It had PCCB ceramic brake discs for the first time, and this was really an extreme sports car, and this equipment was actually also in the GT2, which was 50% lighter than the brake disc on the regular steel discs. And it also had service life of up to 300,000 kilometers. Between 1997 and 2005, Porsche produced a total of 175,262 Type 996. With the same engine as the turbo, but normally aspirated, the GT3 marked the start of a new era. It offered pure driving pleasure both on the road and on the track. It also formed the basis for the Porsche brand cups, as well as a starting point for many race victories for Porsche customer motorsport all over the world. In the 996, the 3.6-liter naturally aspirated engine initially had an output of 360 PS, and then 381 PS in 2003. The additional power and unchanged fuel consumption was thanks in large part to the new VarioCam camshaft adjustment. The new 911 GT3 accelerated to 100 kilometers an hour from a standstill in 4.5 seconds, which was 0.3 seconds faster than the former model. And now it benefited from even better streamlining, and it continued to surge ahead to a maximum speed of 306 kilometers an hour. Also part of the 2003 update, the GT3 received 6-piston brake calipers instead of the 4-piston type. And moreover, it offered the ceramic composite brakes for the first time, which also acts as a way to remove unsprung weight by 18 kilograms. The 911 GT3 RS followed in 2003 as an even sharper edition. From 2004, the Porsche 911 was available in more different versions than ever before. Customers could choose from coupe, targa, cabriolet, speedster, rear drive, all-wheel drive, narrow, wide body, and you can get water-cooled, normally aspirated, or turbocharged engines. Including special models, the range had a total of 24 model variants, supplemented by a wide range of personalization options. With the design of the 997, Porsche made the 911 even sharper thanks to a more dynamic and powerful look. The Carrera gained a more pronounced shaping of the rear end, while the width of the S, GT, and Turbo models grew by 44 millimeters. The Type 997 set itself apart from the predecessor by a steeper, round glass headlight look, making it really a return to an important style element of the air-cooled 911 models. And there was a facelift in 2008 which introduced bi-xenon headlights and LED daytime running lights. The 997 generation of the Porsche 911 also set new benchmarks on the technical side. The 3.6-liter six-cylinder engine initially produced 325 PS. The cylinder bore was increased by 3 millimeters for the S models, which produced a displacement of 3.8 liters. And this became the largest flat engine in the series production 911 thus far. And from 2008, Porsche really revamped the engine range and offered direct fuel injection for the first time. Fuel consumption and emissions fell, but the performance actually increased significantly. So it was now 345 PS for the 3.6-liter model and 385 for the 3.8. And the introduction of the 911 Carrera GTS closed the gap between the S model and the GT3 and even produced 408 PS. The 911 Turbo also benefited from the technology offensive. The 3.6-liter was the first to offer turbocharger with the VTG technology, which is variable turbine geometry. The later update brought a displacement of 3.8 liters and direct fuel injection, and the increase in power went from 480 to 500 PS. The 911 Turbo S even came with 530 PS and combined for the first time a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. The GT3 models also benefited from an increased power, going from 415 to 435 PS, and the RS 3.8 even delivered 450 PS. However, the crowning achievement was the GT3 RS 4.0. The vehicle was limited to 600 units and generated 500 PS. The 997 generation also featured a number of remarkable special editions, such as the 911 Sport Classic, the 911 Speedster, and the 911 Turbo S edition 918 Spyder. So this model was specifically made for depositors for the 918 Spyder, which was about to launch, and it was really made for people to maybe eager to drive their Porsche before the 918 Spyder came. So it was a very rare model. And Porsche produced a total of just over 213,000 997s between 2004 and 2012. Among the 997 generation, only the GT2 RS was the fastest and most powerful. Its engine developed 620 PS, enough for a lap time of 7 minutes 18 seconds on the Nürburgring's North Loop. With 620 horsepower and a weight down 70 kilograms, the GT2 production was limited to 500 units. The 3.6-liter boxer engine was boosted by 2 turbochargers with VTG, and it really drove the rear wheels with a 6-speed manual transmission from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.5 seconds. And it went to 200 kilometers an hour in just 9.8 seconds, to 300 kilometers an hour in 28.9 seconds. The top speed was 330 kilometers an hour. Then came the 7th generation, the 991. The designers really refined the whole sports car icon. A lot of eye-catching features became introduced in this model: flatter looking LED taillights, altered front bumpers, bigger air intakes. There's a wider track, a wheelbase that was 10 centimeters longer, and it had adaptive aerodynamics. So the 991 generation, Porsche made fundamental changes, making it more comfortable and simultaneously higher performing. A balancing act that was previously thought to be inconceivable, and a bigger technical jump or actually the biggest among the 911 generations. So it really, this generation was 90%, the components were 90% either new or redesigned. So it was a very big update to this generation. And the newly designed interior referenced the Carrera GT and really had a lot of classic elements of the 911. And it was also the model to introduce a proper Porsche communications management system and improved connectivity, as well as rail traffic information. Thanks to a newly developed platform with stiffer, lightweight body made of aluminum and steel, the body weight was reduced 80 kilograms compared to the predecessor. And Porsche had redeveloped the chassis of the 911. Initially, it was a 3.4-liter, 6-cylinder boxer engine with 350 horsepower. It had also the very first production 7-speed manual transmission. And it was available on Carrera models. With the 2015 model year update, Porsche reduced the displacement to 3-liter, and the consumption and emissions of the engine dropped. And really, this was, despite the drop in displacement, it was really the twin turbocharging that made the difference. The car was 20 PS more powerful in the best spec, and the agility and driving enjoyment were enhanced. The GT2 RS premiered at the Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2017, and at the heart of the high-performance sports car was a 700 horsepower twin-turbo flat-six engine. And it was very light, and it allowed the car to go to 100 kilometers an hour in 2.8 seconds. And it was a rear-wheel drive coupe, and it had a top speed of 340 kilometers an hour. And it was really its near motorsport drive technology that was shining. It was the previous GT2 RS was a 3.6 liter, and this one was 80 horsepower more powerful. And it also had a customized 7-speed double clutch transmission. It also offered rear wheel steering and a special exhaust system that was made of extra lightweight titanium. Those were all new features on this car. What happened is on May 11, 2017, the 1 millionth 911 was produced. So it rolled off the line in Zuffenhausen. It was a Carrera S coupe with a 7-speed manual transmission, 54 years after the production started on this iconic sports car. It was painted in an exclusive Irish green color, and was equipped with numerous exclusive features that was hinting at the original 911 from 1963. So when everything was said and done with the 991, there were over 230,000 examples produced, which this is one very popular model. And before we close a chapter on this model, I'd like to introduce you to a video about the Targa. So before I roll the Targa video, I also want to say that this new version was introducing a brand new type of roof mechanism, which was going to be the new Targa in this model. So let's have a look.
The 911 Targa, still a style icon today. Its unique design emerged from a special set of circumstances. In the early 1960s, a discussion about inadequate safety features in convertibles was underway in the United States. A ban on the sale of convertibles was considered, so Porsche developed a new body type under the direction of Ferdinand Alexander Porsche. Inspired by motorsport, the car was given a roll bar. Other new features included a roof section that could be taken out and stowed in the trunk, as well as a fabric top in the back that continued the silhouette of the 911 Coupe. All that was missing was a name.
Und dann kamen wir auf unsere Hausstrecke die Targa Florio. Und dann haben wir gesagt, Targa Florio. Und hat einer meiner Kollegen gesagt, nein, das sagen die Kunden Flori. Und da habe ich gesagt, Moment, dann lassen wir doch einfach das Florio weg. Und so ist der Name Targa dann entstanden. Nicht wissen, dass auf Italienisch Targa Schutzschild heißt.
The first series models rolled out of the plant in Zuffenhausen in early 1967. The Targa found fervent admirers from the word go. More than a quarter of all first-generation Porsche 911s were delivered with a silver roll bar. In addition to the folding window, it was fitted with a pane of heatable glass. At the 1969 IAA, Porsche debuted the 914, paving the way for the final breakthrough of the Targa roof. Ultimately, the top-of-the-range 911 Turbo came with the Targa roof. In 1995, the fourth generation of the Targa was fitted with a multi-section, fully electric panoramic roof made of safety glass, which made the roll bar unnecessary. The roll bar made its comeback in the 2014 Targa, and with it, cutting-edge roof technology. It opened in a swift 19 seconds. The first safety convertible became one of the most beautiful sports cars in the world. An icon from the get-go.
So when the 992 came out, which turns out to be the current generation vehicle, it was really a more powerful, more emotional, and really more efficient than its predecessor. You see a theme here? And we really are seeing a lot of technology being baked into this vehicle. And even with these innovations, it was still very much a puristic sports car. And the new generation is still very much 911, even with a digital cockpit, with really the rev counter being the only analog display in the car. So the revised model of the sports car kept the architecture of the predecessor, but a lot of changes happened. The PDK transmission is now able to accommodate an electric motor. False bottoms in the body created space for batteries. This means that the 911 is now hybrid capable, optimally prepared for the future. The turbocharged six-cylinder base engine now produces 450 PS, and the S version, the 450 PS is for the S version. And the car has been built since 2018, and there have been almost 100,000 examples that have been built by the factory by the end of last year. And in addition to the Turbo, GTS, and GT3 model, which have been introduced since the 992's launch, let's look at the two last 911 models introduced right around the 60th anniversary.
Out of the 305 cars that have started from Paris, Steve Rothman's Porsches are undoubtedly favorites.
I walk along the avenue. I never thought I'd meet a girl like you. Meet a girl like you. And I ran so far away. I couldn't get away.
flight down the South Atlantic target range makes history. This is the booster that will carry the Gemini space vehicle on the nation's next.
I'm leaving. Well, thank you very much for your attention. I'd like to now open the floor for questions. And
Yes.
if I remember correctly, it was 1976. That technology it took a very long time before another manufacturer started using it. I don't know. I presume there have been advancements in the technology, although I don't know the answer to that question. But yes, it was something that was revolutionary at that time. But as time has gone by, more and more manufacturers have joined the fray and adopted that technology. You're welcome. Yes. I'm sorry, your question is about the sheet metal for which model? Oh, the hot-dip galvanized steel conception? So this was adopted because it was a way to mitigate the effects of rust on the body. So it was really a technology that allowed the treatment of the steel that was used in the car so that it was less susceptible to corrosion perforation. So really it enhanced, and a lot of classic customers appreciate the fact that the sturdier conception of that technology helps with obviously keeping the car for a longer time. Yes?
You said there was a copyright reason why the 901 became the 911.
Correct. So the reason why the 901 became the 911 is because Peugeot, which is a French brand, was using the monikers that had the 0 in the middle. So they had the 404 and the 504, and all these Peugeot models had a 0, and that's something that they really believed in. So they went to Porsche and said, hey, hold on a moment. This is really something that we started, so stay away. So what happened is we thought, okay, let's now call it a 911, and the rest is history. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Great. Yes.
Yes, sir. I presently own a 992. When can I expect the next model?
So the question is, when can we expect the next model of following the 992? So we have not been, we haven't really mentioned when the car is going to arrive. I would venture to say it will be sooner than later. So probably within the next year. Yes. Yes.
With regard to the 911 that's going to have battery capabilities, when do you see that technology being brought in?
So the question is regarding the car being ready for hybrid technology. So that is something that the board members have been mentioning that they've been working on. It's really a way to bring the 911 into the future, being more sustainable and still keeping its really sporty aspects. And so that's a technology. Obviously, the platform's ready, so it already ready for the adoption. So we haven't said when that was going to happen, but I would suspect we might see it in the next generation of the car. Yes.
So I've heard on that same theme that Porsche was rejecting an all-electric 911 version. Is that true? Is there anything to that, or are they planning to go as far as just a hybrid for now? And are there talks of going all-electric?
So the question is if the future of the 911 means that it might one day be all electric or not. So really the management of Porsche has been very keen on saying that the 911 will retain the internal combustion engine for as long as possible. We're doing many things to ensure that this happens. One of them is we've been working on a sustainable fuel, which is 100% sustainable. And so that kind of technology we feel is important, not only for the future of the 911, but also for everybody that has a classic car and that would like to keep driving the classic car without necessarily harming the environment. You're welcome. Yes?
Can we expect a 992 G22 RS eventually?
Potentially. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, that's interesting. When was the last year they were made in offer?
The GT2? The GT2 RS was the 991 generation, the 991.2. So that was 2017, and I believe there were only 2 model years of that car. So 2017, 2018. I'm sorry, if I had what? I don't know the answer to that question. I can find out, but I apologize. I don't know at the top of my head. You're welcome. Yes? Of course. I didn't make it myself, but thank you. Yes, that's great. Yes.
You guys are the masters of mass customization. Every single person that orders a custom book has one.
Yes.
Something no one else does.
Yes, so the point the second point the gentleman mentioned is the fact that Porsche has been very keen on offering really just a level of bespoke in our vehicles, which means that really your car, chances are your car might be one of a kind because there's just so many ways you can personalize your car, and it's really countless millions and millions of possible configurations. So yes, that's great. Thank you for. It is very, yes, it's definitely something that we offer. Probably the cost is, if you can afford it, it's great. I mean, but that's what really makes the beauty of it, is we really believe that our customers want something. If we can offer it, we will, and that's how we do it. Thank you. Oh, sorry, a question there? Yep.
With the increased popularity of the 911, if I were to order one today, when would I get it delivered?
That's a good question. It also depends as to where you're located. It depends on really your dealerships. So, I mean, the deliveries, if we're talking about in BC versus Ontario versus Quebec versus, it will change. So, and, pardon me? FAF, which is not Porsche Center Vaughan. That's the new name for FAF, yes. And, but yes, it also depends on which model of the 911, so that I know some models are a little more limited in production. So like the 911 Dakar that we saw, that could potentially be, I mean, again, a limited number tends to sell out fast and might not be able to get one. So, yes.
When did the Special Wishes program?
Sorry, that's going to be the last question. I'm sorry.
When did the Special Wishes program start, and is it still in effect?
So, a very good question on the Special Wishes program, which we call Porsche Wunderwunsch. So that program has been offered for several decades. It's really, I think we were talking about the point that you can really make the car if you want a specific color, if you want a trim inside, like a piping of a different color, if you want monogrammed, a piece in the car that's monogram, if you want the various items, it's really, the world's your oyster. You can really spec the vehicle in the way that you wish, hence the name Special Wishes Program. And so yes, and we have special engineers that work to make this happen so that the car, even if you build something in the interior, that it will still be very much a Porsche, it will be authentic, and it will be special, it will be something that's made for the customer. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's been for several decades now. I want to say it was in the 60s, but I'm not 100% certain. You're welcome. I think this concludes. Thank you, Rob.
Patrick,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. We're going to have 15 minutes for changeover, and then we'll be back in. Thank you. If you like this, don't forget the Owen sound.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
My name is Miles Morales, and I'm Brooklyn's one and only Spider-Man.
Miles! Wanna get out of here?
So wait a minute, there's an elite crew with all the best spider people in it? I'm Spider-Man.
Oh, no way! All of us are.
Being Spider-Man